Now we're going to start talking about the secondary mortgage market. So I'm going to use that term, and we're going to discuss mortgage pass-throughs, mortgage pass-through securities. So the secondary market in mortgages, or the secondary mortgage market. Okay, so what do we mean by a secondary mortgage market? The idea of a secondary market in mortgages, or secondary mortgage market, is to enable pension funds and mutual funds to invest in mortgages. But if you sell mortgages one by one to pension funds and mutual funds, there are a bunch of problems with that. One of which is that the transaction cost per sale is high, so there'd be a lot of overhead if you sold individual mortgages in a secondary market. And in addition, an individual mortgage doesn't give you any diversification. What these people want is some diversification so that in some sense prepayments average out. I guess that's the main thing, so that the rate at which the mortgages prepay average out, because some mortgages are going to pay out after 3 years, another might stay in the house for 20 years, and what you want is some sort of predictable average performance, not be idiosyncratic depending on which borrower you happen to have. So you want some diversification with respect to prepayment. So one thought for creating this secondary market would be to have the intermediary own the mortgages and issue bonds with the mortgages as collateral. So that would be known as a covered bond. However, that's not what emerged in this country. What emerged in this country was pooling the mortgages. So you take a pool of similar mortgages. Similar in terms of the coupon and the remaining maturity. That is, you're not going to mix a loan that's due in 2025 with a loan that's due in 2035. And you're not going to mix a coupon of 5% and a coupon of 5.5%, the coupon being the interest rate on the mortgage. That you want them to be similar in those terms. And the cash flows from the mortgage pass through. That's the main characteristic of mortgage-backed securities, is that they pass through the conduit who issues the securities to the investors. So you can think of having a whole bunch of mortgages, and they're all paying their principal and interest. That is, the monthly payments on the mortgage. And those monthly payments come from the individual borrowers. So we have the borrowers here. They come into a servicer, and I think you'll remember we talked about the role of a mortgage servicer. And the servicer will then usually take a servicing fee and then pass those payments to the conduit and then pass them in turn on to investors. So the typical conduits have been Freddie and Fannie. Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae have played that role as mortgage conduits. So the borrower, let's say, has a 4.25% mortgage coupon or mortgage interest rate. I'll use that term. And let's say that the servicing, so the servicer might take out 20 basis points. So that leaves 4.05% in interest plus whatever principal would be due that month would then be passed through to the conduit. Let's say the conduit takes another 25 basis points. So that would leave 3.80% payable to investors. Now in practice, what investors typically want are round coupons. So they might want something like, they would either want 3.75% or 4.0%. They wouldn't want this 3.80%. So the way you get to round coupons is something called a buy up or buy down. That is, the conduit will pay, let's say that the interest rate is 4.25%, which is more than, and you're going to put it into a 3.75% security. Well, the 4.25% interest rate is a bit higher than what's needed, and so the conduit would sort of buy down that interest rate. That is, the conduit might take a higher fee. Instead of 25 basis points, might take 30 basis points in the fee, and in exchange for that, kind of pay more for that mortgage while it's getting that higher fee. So the net result is that you get a whole bunch of different mortgages paying in all their principal and interest payments, and then after you take out the servicing fee and the conduit's fee, the investors get all the remaining cash flows. They get the principal and interest. And what that means is, if there are prepayments, so that mortgages pay off early, the investors get some of that cash flow early. So investors are getting a shared interest in these pooled cash flows. So if there's a $1 million security, let's say $1 million worth of mortgages in a security, and an investor buys a 1/10 interest, let's say they pay $100,000, they get $100,000 worth of the security, then as these mortgage cash flows come in, that investor will get 1/10 of the cash flows. So if, in particular, if prepayments come in, so that we're getting a lot of principal paid down, then this investor would get 1/10 of those prepayments as they come in. So that's the sense in which this is just a pure pass-through of cash flows. Now, the question happens, what happens when there's a mortgage default? And with Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae standing in to provide a guarantee, when a mortgage defaults, from an investor's point of view, it acts exactly like a prepayment. So a default works like a prepayment to the investor. So what happens is the mortgage is pulled from the pool. The mortgage goes out of the pool. Freddie, let's say, if it's Freddie Mac, pays all the principal, the unpaid balance, to the investors, and then I guess by the way, on this diagram of investors, I probably should have put sort of arrows showing there can be many investors in a given pool of mortgages. So the Freddie Mac pays principal to the investors, and then Freddie has to try to recover the value from the house. Remember, they've got the house as collateral, and then they absorb whatever loss. Yeah, so mortgages can default, but investors, Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae security, don't suffer from that mortgage default. It would come out of Freddie and Fannie's loss reserves and out of their capital and profits and so on. It would be a negative for them, not for investors. For investors, again, it shows up like a prepayment. So again, the main picture is that you're pooling a lot of mortgages together, and the cash flows from the mortgage primarily pass through and get passed along to investors, and that's why it's called a pass-through security.